India is home to over 1.4 billion people. And of those 1.4 billion people, over 450 million are located within the northwest states of Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Uttar Pradesh, about one-third of all Indians. Unfortunately, this region also happens to be one of the most water distressed in the entire world. So why is India struggling to fix its water issues in the region? And what will happen if it fails to do so?
Cities like Chennai, in Bangalore, in Mumbai, in Hyderabad, in Delhi, and many other cities, policies are linked to the master plan and the building bylaws, or to the water connection that you get from the city utility. In Bangalore, it's mandatory for every building which has a connection from the BWSSB, the Bangalore Water Supply and Sewerage Board, that you should harvest 60 liters of rain per square meter of roof area of your building, right? So if you have a 100 square meter roof area, you must create a 6,000 liter storage tank or recharge structure or a combination of both. So building bylaws are the easiest way to push rainwater harvesting, make sure that it gets adopted. It's also easy to convince new builders because then the cost of rainwater harvesting is just about 1% of the total cost of the building itself, excluding the land cost. For old buildings, retrofitting sometimes becomes a bit difficult, but there you must persuade people to only do even a part of the roof and not consider the whole roof, but to do some component of it so that you're able to collect rain. So it takes a fine governance framework to address this universal access to water as well as capturing the economic right to water, which is what we should constantly strive for in a democratic fashion. Legally, you can go to court and demand your share of water, but that's not the way it works. You know, a right is a compact between the state and an individual, a citizen of a country. It means that if you don't have access to the right, if you don't have access to water, you can demand from the state that you should be provided that bit of water that you need for health and hygiene and for survival. But there's a complex argument and set of conditions that need to exist. So therefore, society itself, community itself has to provide some form of water, not just the state alone. And individuals too, through acts of charity or philanthropy, should also be providing water. So it takes all to make sure that the right to water is made a ground reality, which means the individual, the community, and the state, all three have to come together to make sure that there's no individual deprived of water for life or livelihood. So it's not a freebie, it's your right as a citizen of a nation that the state provides you, the state that we have constructed provides us water for life and for livelihood. Suppose you're a small marginal farmer, you should have access to water to cultivate enough crops for you to live and to survive with your food security.
This exponential growth and exponential population growth in Bangalore, these lakes are kind of getting encroached by development. But I think now the government is actually taking a lot of initiatives about how to address this particular thing, development over lakes and things. One of the major things is your concrete cover is increasing and the permeability is very less. Then there are a lot of industries which tap in, we just release a lot of pollutants into the groundwater, and then that groundwater is no longer usable. So a lot of this is happening across India. And we have seen many instances in Bangalore also, and it's a very generalized issue that we face.
Similar like the Vartur.
Yes, it's a Vartur scenario. Even the Belandur Lake also, if you look at it, the Vartur, that whole basin, it keeps foaming up for these reasons that it is filled in with a lot of pollutants, right? One of the major thing is the ways you can tackle this groundwater improvement is, one is desilting it, trying to keep it clean, keeping it away all the pollutants released from the industrial wastes and all of that. And the other thing is majority in Bangalore at least, though we have provisions by BWSSB for water supply, there is still majority of the population or majority of the household depends on groundwater. And it's like a challenging thing, though the government is trying to give in the best of their potable water facilities, and they have really succeeded in many cases. But tapping on the groundwater directly is now recently being, been taken care of the government. How much of usage you're doing? Can you look out recycling the same water? How about installing rainwater harvesting systems? So a few of our regulations now have mandated rainwater harvesting systems. If at all you have a house for beyond like 12,000 square meter of area, it is like a mandatory thing that you need to provide a rainwater harvesting. And that helps in their usage also. Plus they have a restoration tank which should also have percolation, also certain percentage which is happening. I don't think so. We have captured all the water which we have. It rained heavily, and there were a lot of floods. But has there been almost a 50% of rainwater capture that we have done? Was the question. So if at all that was done, maybe this drought or this situation wouldn't have occurred.
River linking is not a environmentally and ecologically appropriate idea. It is fraught with consequences of biodiversity loss, of huge investments being made in something very disruptive. The first charge of managing water sustainably is to look at water as a local resource and to plan for water as a local resource, however much we get from rain, however much we have as groundwater and stream flows, and to make sure that we don't overuse water for wrong reasons. Just give you one example. You can go to an arid area and start to grow sugarcane, which is a very water-intensive crop. Then all the interlinked rivers will not be good enough for you to supply water for these sugarcane fields. But if we grow, for example, millets in that particular place, which requires only rain-fed water, then we'll have sufficient food and crops for that particular local populace. So once you start to increase demand irrationally outside the carrying capacity of that particular region, then all the transfers of water that you do from everywhere will simply not be sufficient to manage. So look at water as a local resource. Plan your food, energy, water nexus appropriately and live within your needs. So rainwater harvesting globally is understood as a process of collecting rain from a clean catchment, filtering it and storing it. In the Indian context, rainwater harvesting is also understood as taking the rainwater and recharging the aquifers, whether it's the shallow aquifer or the deep aquifers. In other parts of the globe, it's called managed aquifer recharge. So rainwater harvesting can start with a simple thing as putting a bucket below a dripping roof, right? And that's rainwater harvesting for you. To make it a bit more systematic, put rainwater gutters, collect it at one point, but from a flat roof, bring it down a down pipe, and then collect it in a tank, a plastic tank. That's rainwater harvesting. It's easy to do, it's easy to begin.
I mean, it's only recently that I think when I talk to people in Bangalore, they are starting to see, okay, this is something, we need to be conservative, like they're conservative about their savings account. We can't exhaust this. For maybe a 10 ml of urine you pass, you might flush it down with 2 liters of water. Like, on what scale is that sustainable?
Singapore is universally touted as an example because it has something called the 4 taps approach. One tap is water which it takes from Malaysia. The other tap is rainwater which it holds into its many reservoirs that it's created. The third tap is something called new water, where it recycles wastewater and puts it back into the system. The fourth tap is desalination, where they desalinate seawater and bring it into supply for the city. So Singapore has 4 taps. We in India must have 5 or 6 taps, and it would depend on whether you're near the coast or not. And we should focus on groundwater also as a major source of water, which Singapore does not have thanks to its hydrogeology. We have groundwater, which we also need to integrate as part of our solution basket.
I think as a citizen, you need to speak to your government authorities to see that you get a safe water supply. In case you have a water supply in your area which is not that very clean, you can look at procedures which you can at household level clean with the water which is available to you at the nearest point.
Currently, basic water conservation is taught at schools with chapters where children learn about rainwater harvesting, how to store water, and the water cycle. The problem here is that all of this knowledge is just theoretical knowledge, and it does not help children apply that knowledge in their day-to-day lives. But now we all know that water shortage is a real problem around us. And thus, I believe that teachers play a huge role in bridging this gap between theoretical knowledge and making children understand how to apply that knowledge in their day-to-day lives. Instead of blaming textbooks for the knowledge they provide, I believe teachers can actually use that textbook knowledge as baseline inspiration and build off of that by understanding the child's context.
You can see that water crisis does not only affect the ecosystem, but also the body at a cellular level, which is why purely from even a medical point of view, as a medical professional, I feel water conservation is very important in the future.
We do have the freedom to do a lot of things, but what matters is the context where we are living in. If we are living in a time where rain deficit is going to be more common, the patterns that we see now is that maybe the annual rainfall stays the same, but there'll be flash rains and long periods of drought. So in that context, can I even say that, oh no, I can still use water the way my grandparents used to? I don't know. I think it's about being smart in the context of time you're living in.
There are a certain amount of scope the government also has. They will provide as much as possible. It is also left to us as to how much we need to take into consideration when we make these large developments.
No water policy can be written without agricultural policy, energy policy, and a forest policy. All these are intertwined. Water literacy means that we understand the implications of eating water-intensive food crops, or misusing energy requirements, or cutting down forests for recreational purpose or for coffee plantations, tea plantations, so on and so forth. So unless all of this is protected, nature itself as a whole is protected in the era of climate change, through our literacy, ecological literacy, water literacy, we will be in trouble. So the time is now for us to become literate.
The future depends on what we do in the present.